Every American kitchen in the 1960s had one ingredient the whole week was built around: a pound of ground beef, the cheapest meat at the counter, and a grandmother who could turn it into a different dinner every single night. She never opened a cookbook for any of it. The recipes lived in her hands. A pound of beef cost under 50 cents and fed a whole family, and she stretched it with rice, noodles, potatoes, and whatever the garden gave. It built the everyday dinner culture of working-class American homes for an entire decade. If you grew up in an American kitchen in the 1960s, you already know that smell. Beef browning in a cast-iron skillet at 5 o'clock sharp. These are 25 forgotten ground beef recipes your grandma never needed a cookbook for. Subscribe before we begin. The countdown starts now. Hamburger Spanish rice bake. The oven version of the skillet classic. Ground beef and rice baked together in tomato until every grain went red and savory. Ground beef cost 39 cents a pound in 1963. Today, around $5.50. Rice, canned tomatoes, onion, and green pepper. Total then under $1. Today, under $8. Fed 6. You brown the beef with onion and pepper. You mix in rice and canned tomatoes. You pour it into a baking dish. You cover and bake at 350 for 1 hour. The rice goes tender and red. The beef settles into every grain. The top goes slightly crisp. Hamburger Spanish rice bake came from Tex-Mex-influenced home cooking. By 1963, it was a weeknight standard in working-class homes nationwide. 1 pound of beef and a cup of rice. 6 people fed for under $1. Texas hash. The one-dish supper that combined ground beef, rice, tomatoes, and chili powder into a baked Texas classic. Ground beef cost 39 cents a pound in 1962. Today, around $5.50. Rice, canned tomatoes, onion, green pepper, and chili powder. Total then under $1. Today, under $8. Fed 6. You brown the beef with onion and pepper. You stir in rice, tomatoes, and chili powder. You pour it into a baking dish. You cover and bake at 350 for 1 hour. The rice absorbs the spiced tomato. The beef goes savory. The chili powder gives it warmth. Texas hash came from Depression-era Texas home cooking. By 1962, it was a weeknight standard across the South and Midwest. A whole Texas supper from 1 pound of beef. Hamburger gravy over mashed potatoes. The poor man's steak. Browned ground beef in a thick milk gravy spooned over mashed potatoes. Pure comfort for pennies. Ground beef cost 39 cents a pound in 1963. Today, around $5.50. Flour, milk, and potatoes. Total then under 70 cents. Today, under $6. Fed 5. You brown the beef. You whisk flour into the drippings. You pour in milk and stir until a thick gravy forms. You spoon it over mashed potatoes. The gravy goes creamy and rich. The beef flavors it throughout. The potatoes soak it all up. Hamburger gravy over potatoes came from Midwestern and Southern thrift cooking. By 1963, it was a weeknight comfort supper nationwide. A pound of beef turned into the creamiest comfort supper there is. Beef rice-a-roni skillet. The convenience dinner that browned ground beef right into a box of rice-a-roni for a complete one-pan meal. Ground beef cost 39 cents a pound in 1964. Today, around $5.50. A box of rice-a-roni and onion. Total then under $1. Today, under $7. Fed 5. You brown the beef with onion. You add the rice-a-roni and its seasoning with water. You cover and simmer 20 minutes. The rice and vermicelli go tender. The beef settles throughout. The seasoning flavors everything. Beef rice-a-roni came from convenience cooking after rice-a-roni launched in 1958. By 1964, it was a weeknight standard nationwide. The San Francisco treat made into a whole family dinner. Hamburger stroganoff over toast. The quick stroganoff served not over noodles but over toast, a faster, cheaper version for a tired night. Ground beef cost 39 cents a pound in 1963. Today, around $5.50. Cream of mushroom soup, sour cream, onion, and white bread. Total then under $1. Today under $7. Fed 4. You brown the beef with onion. You stir in the soup and a little water. You fold in sour cream off the heat. You spoon it over toast. The sauce goes creamy and rich. The beef goes tender. The toast soaks up the gravy. Hamburger stroganoff over toast came from American convenience cooking. By 1963, it was a fast weeknight supper nationwide. Stroganoff flavor without noodles or fuss.
Beef and bean hot dish. The Midwestern casserole that layered ground beef and baked beans into a sweet, hearty one-dish supper. Ground beef cost 39 cents a pound in 1962. Today, around $5.50. Baked beans, onion, brown sugar, and bacon. Total then under $1. Today, under $8. Fed 6. You brown the beef with onion. You mix it with baked beans, brown sugar, and a little mustard. You top with bacon. You bake at 350 for 40 minutes. The beans go thick and sweet. The beef settles throughout. The bacon crisps on top. Beef and bean hot dish came from Midwestern church supper cooking. By 1962, it was a potluck and weeknight standard nationwide. A sweet, hearty casserole from beef and a can of beans. She never measured. She never read a recipe. The whole week of dinners lived in her hands, learned from her mother, who learned from hers. Cheeseburger pie. The Bisquick impossible pie that formed its own crust as it baked, full of ground beef and cheese. Ground beef cost 39 cents a pound in 1964. Today, around $5.50. Bisquick, eggs, milk, onion, and cheddar. Total then under $1. Today, under $7. Fed 6. You brown the beef with onion and spread it in a pie plate. You scatter cheddar over it. You whisk Bisquick, eggs, and milk and pour it on top. You bake at 400 for 30 minutes. The topping forms its own crust. The cheese melts through. The beef stays savory underneath. Cheeseburger pie came from Bisquick recipe promotions in the 1960s. By 1964, it was a weeknight standard nationwide. A cheeseburger that baked its own crust. Hamburger vegetable soup. The end-of-week soup that turned a pound of ground beef and whatever vegetables were left into a full pot of supper. Ground beef cost 39 cents a pound in 1962. Today, around $5.50. Canned tomatoes, onion, and mixed vegetables. Total then under $1. Today, under $7. Fed 8. You brown the beef with onion. You add tomatoes, vegetables, and water. You simmer 45 minutes. The broth goes rich and red. The beef flavors everything. The vegetables go tender. Hamburger vegetable soup came from Universal Thrift Cooking. By 1962, it was a Saturday supper standard nationwide. A pound of beef stretched into a whole pot of soup. Runza.
The Nebraska German specialty. Bread dough wrapped around seasoned ground beef and cabbage, baked into a hand pie. Ground beef cost 39 cents a pound in 1963. Today, around $5.50. Bread dough, cabbage, and onion. Total then under $1. Today, under $7. Maid-Rite. You brown the beef with cabbage and onion. You wrap spoonfuls in bread dough and seal them. You bake at 375 for 25 minutes until golden. The dough goes golden and soft. The beef and cabbage steam inside. The whole thing is portable and filling. Runzas came from Volga German immigrants in Nebraska in the early 1900s. By 1963, they were a regional staple across the Great Plains. The German hand pie that built Nebraska. Beef noodle bake with cottage cheese. The casserole that layered ground beef, noodles, and cottage cheese into a creamy baked supper. Ground beef cost 39 cents a pound in 1964. Today, around $5.50. Egg noodles, cottage cheese, tomato sauce, and onion. Total then under $1.25. Today, under $8. Fed 6. You brown the beef with onion and tomato sauce. You layer noodles, cottage cheese, and beef in a dish. You bake at 350 for 45 minutes. The noodles go tender. The cottage cheese melts creamy. The beef flavors the whole dish. Beef noodle bake with cottage cheese came from Midwestern home cooking. By 1964, it was a weeknight standard nationwide. A creamy, layered casserole from 1 pound of beef. Hamburger curry over rice. The mild American curry that turned ground beef into something exotic for a 1960s family with curry powder and raisins. Ground beef cost 39 cents a pound in 1963. Today, around $5.50. Onion, curry powder, raisins, and rice. Total then under $1. Today, under $7. Fed 5. You brown the beef with onion. You stir in curry powder and raisins with a little water. You simmer 10 minutes. You serve over rice. The beef goes savory and sweet. The curry adds warmth. The raisins plump throughout. Hamburger curry came from American interpretations of Indian cooking in the 1960s. By 1963, it was an adventurous weeknight supper nationwide. The most exotic thing on a 1963 dinner table. Maid-Rite loose meat sandwiches. The Midwestern loose meat sandwich, seasoned crumbled ground beef piled on a bun, eaten with a spoon. Ground beef cost 39 cents a pound in 1962. Today, around $5.50. Onion, mustard, and hamburger buns. Total then under $1. Today, under $7. Fed 6. You brown the beef with onion until very fine and crumbly. You season with mustard and a little broth. The bun soaks up the juices. A spoon catches what falls. Maid-Rite sandwiches came from Iowa diners starting in 1926. By 1962, the homemade version was a Midwestern weeknight standard. The sandwich you had to eat with a spoon. You remember the skillet, the sound of beef hitting hot iron, the smell that meant dinner was coming and that someone was home and cooking it for you. Hamburger stuffed onions. The dish that hollowed out large onions and stuffed them with seasoned ground beef before baking. Ground beef cost 39 cents a pound in 1963. Today, around $5.50. Large onions, rice, and tomato sauce. Total then under $1. Today, under $7. Fed 5. You hollow out large onions. You stuff them with beef and rice. You set them in a dish with tomato sauce. You bake at 375 for 1 hour. The onions go soft and sweet. The filling cooks through. The sauce thickens around them. Hamburger stuffed onions came from European peasant traditions adapted in America. By 1963, they were a weeknight standard in immigrant-rooted homes. The onion turned into the whole supper. Beef hash with fried egg. The skillet hash topped with a fried egg, a complete supper from ground beef and potatoes. Ground beef cost 39 cents a pound in 1962. Today, around $5.50. Potatoes, onion, and eggs. Total then under 80 cents. Today, under $7. Fed 4. You fry diced potatoes until golden. You add beef and onion and brown together. You press it flat and crisp the bottom. You top each plate with a fried egg. The hash goes crisp and golden. The egg yolk runs into it. The bottom crust is the best part. Beef hash came from New England thrift cooking. By 1962, it was a breakfast for dinner standard nationwide. A hash topped with an egg, fit for any hour. Spanish hamburger. The open-faced sandwich of saucy, seasoned ground beef spooned over bread, a sloppy Joe's older cousin. Ground beef cost 39 cents a pound in 1963. Today, around $5.50. Tomato sauce, onion, green pepper, and bread. Total then under $1. Today, under $7. Fed 5. You brown the beef with onion and pepper. You add tomato sauce and simmer. You spoon it open face over bread. The beef goes saucy and savory. The bread soaks it up. The peppers add sweetness. Spanish hamburger came from American home cooking in the mid-century. By 1963, it was a weeknight standard nationwide. The open-face beef sandwich before the sloppy Joe took over. Beef and potato pasties. The Cornish hand pie that miners brought to America. Pastry filled with beef and potato, baked into a portable meal. Ground beef cost 39 cents a pound in 1963. Today, around $5.50. Pie dough, potato, onion, and rutabaga. Total then under $1. Today, under $7. Made 6. You mix raw beef with diced potato, onion, and rutabaga. You fold the filling into pastry rounds and crimp. You bake at 375 for 45 minutes. The crust goes golden. The filling steams inside. The whole pie is portable and filling. Pasties came from Cornish miners who settled in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. By 1963, they were a regional staple there. The hand pie that fed the miners. Sour cream noodle bake. The creamy casserole of ground beef, noodles, sour cream, and cottage cheese baked until golden. Ground beef cost 39 cents a pound in 1964. Today, around $5.50. Egg noodles, sour cream, cottage cheese, and tomato sauce. Total then under $1.50. Today, under $9. Fed 6. You brown the beef with tomato sauce. You mix noodles with sour cream and cottage cheese. You layer them and bake at 350 for 45 minutes. The noodles go creamy. The cheese melts through. The beef sauce flavors everything. Sour cream noodle bake came from Midwestern church cooking. Hamburger corn pone pie. The southern casserole of seasoned ground beef topped with a cornbread crust baked into one dish.
Ground beef cost 39 cents a pound in 1962. Today, around $5.50. Tomato sauce, onion, corn, and cornmeal. Total then under $1. Today, under $7. Fed 6. You brown the beef with onion, corn, and tomato sauce. You spread cornbread batter on top. You bake at 400 for 25 minutes. The cornbread bakes golden. The beef bubbles underneath. The two layers come together, continuing from where it cut off. Beef stuffed acorn squash. The fall supper that filled halved acorn squash with seasoned ground beef before baking until both went tender. Ground beef cost 39 cents a pound in 1963. Today, around $5.50. Acorn squash, onion, rice, and brown sugar. Total then under $1. Today, under $7. Fed 4. You halve and seed the squash. You brown the beef with onion and rice. You fill each squash half and bake at 375 for 1 hour. The squash goes soft and sweet. The beef filling cooks through. The brown sugar caramelizes the edges. Beef stuffed acorn squash came from American fall harvest cooking. By 1963, it was an autumn weeknight standard nationwide. The garden squash turned into the whole supper. Hamburger dumpling stew. The hearty stew of ground beef and vegetables, topped with soft dumplings, dropped right into the pot. Ground beef cost 39 cents a pound in 1962. Today, around $5.50. Potatoes, carrots, onion, flour, and milk. Total then under $1. Today, under $8. Fed 6. You brown the beef and add vegetables and broth. You simmer 30 minutes. You drop dumpling dough on top and cook 15 minutes covered. The stew goes rich and thick. The dumplings puff soft. The beef flavors the whole pot. Hamburger dumpling stew came from Midwestern and Appalachian thrift cooking. By 1962, it was a winter weeknight standard nationwide. A pound of beef stretched into stew and dumplings both. Beef and hominy skillet. The Southwestern skillet that combined ground beef with hominy into a hearty, distinctive one-pan supper. Ground beef cost 39 cents a pound in 1963. Today, around $5.50. Canned hominy, onion, tomatoes, and chili powder. Total, then, under $1. Today, under $7. Fed 5. You brown the beef with onion. You stir in hominy, tomatoes, and chili powder. You simmer 15 minutes. The hominy goes tender and chewy. The beef flavors everything. The chili powder gives it warmth. Beef and hominy skillet came from Southwestern and Tex-Mex home cooking. By 1963, it was a weeknight standard across the Southwest. The chewy hominy supper most of America never tried. Wimpy burgers. The loose meat sandwich named after the Popeye character. Saucy, crumbled ground beef on a bun, a weeknight family favorite. Ground beef cost 39 cents a pound in 1962. Today, around $5.50. Onion, ketchup, and hamburger buns. Total then under $1. Today, under $7. Fed 6. You brown the beef with onion until fine. You stir in ketchup and a little water. You spoon it onto buns. The beef stays loose and saucy. The bun soaks it up. The ketchup makes it sweet. Wimpy burgers came from American home cooking, inspired by the Popeye cartoon character. By 1962, they were a children's weeknight favorite nationwide. The burger, named after a cartoon, loved by every child. Glazed ham-style beef loaf. The meatloaf, shaped and glazed like a ham, with a brown sugar and mustard topping that made beef feel like a holiday. Ground beef cost 39 cents a pound in 1963. Today, around $5.50.
breadcrumbs, egg, brown sugar, and mustard. Total, then, under $1. Today, under $7. Fed 6. You mix the beef with breadcrumbs and egg and shape it like a ham. You spread brown sugar and mustard glaze on top. You bake at 350 for 1 hour. The glaze goes dark and sticky. The loaf stays moist. It looks like a holiday ham at a weeknight price. Glazed beef loaf came from Depression-era and mid-century thrift cooking. By 1963, it was a Sunday supper standard nationwide. Beef dressed up to look like a holiday ham. Beef and macaroni hot dish. The Midwestern hot dish that baked ground beef and macaroni in tomato into a hearty one-dish supper. Ground beef cost 39 cents a pound in 1964. Today, around $5.50. Macaroni, canned tomatoes, onion, and cheddar. Total, then, under $1. Today, under $8. Fed 6. You brown the beef with onion. You mix it with cooked macaroni and tomatoes. You top with cheddar and bake at 350 for 30 minutes. The macaroni absorbs the tomato. The cheese melts on top. The beef settles throughout. Beef and macaroni hot dish came from Midwestern church supper cooking. By 1964, it was a potluck and weeknight standard nationwide. The hot dish that fed every church basement in the Midwest.
Closing. Make one of these this week. Just one. Make the hamburger gravy over mashed potatoes and taste why they called it poor man's steak. Or make the Texas hash for a one-dish supper that feeds 6 for under $1. Or make the Runza and discover the German hand pie that built Nebraska. Do not eat it standing at the counter. Do not eat it scrolling through your phone. Set the table. Use a real plate. Sit down. Eat it slow. Let the smell take you back to a kitchen where a woman browned a pound of beef at 5 o'clock and turned the cheapest meat at the counter into a dinner her whole family remembers. This was never about the ground beef. It was about a generation of American grandmothers who never needed a cookbook because the recipes lived in their hands, learned from the women before them, and fed to the children after them. The beef was cheap. The skill was priceless. In the comments, tell me which one your grandmother made. Was it the hamburger gravy or the Texas hash? Tell me the ground beef supper you can still taste when you close your eyes. Tell me her name if you want to. I am reading every one.